What is happening, everybody? My name is Julius, and I am here to talk more Spider-Man. Spider-Man No Way Home is almost upon us. This is a pretty exciting time for fans of comic books in general, comic book movies, but specifically Spider-Man fans. This is the ultimate moment where our fandom is going to be tested with Spider-Man No Way Home because it seems like a dream. But before we get to that film, we have to talk about the films that led us to this point. And I am here to talk with a very special guest. It is Daniel of the show no one asked for. How are you, Daniel?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. Just like you said, everybody's super amped for this movie. I just, unless you're living under a rock, you don't know that this is happening, but this is
Mhm.
like a huge event. Um, yeah, something akin to like when Infinity War or even when the first Avengers came out, we just knew something like it's just going to push the bounds of cinema. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's never going to be the same after. That's
Mhm.
kind of like what's happening here with No Way Home. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited to talk about what led up to this.
Yeah, I'm excited also, and you're gonna be there with us on the day of at the theater. It's insane the amount of people that are gonna be there. Like what, 40 people or something.
Crazy. It's gonna be wild.
So
It's gonna be super wild.
let me ask you, do you think that Angel is selling those tickets?
Of course he is.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I asked
Of
him
course.
I asked him in the
Mm.
first podcast about this, and he said no. He laughed and everything, smiled and all that. But everyone's right. He's scalping.
He knows what he has to say, to stay like so he doesn't get beat up and stuff. But we
Yeah.
all know what's going on.
Yeah.
40
Right.
tickets. Mm.
Yeah. Let me spend $500, and you can get 1,000 for just one of them. So all he has to do is really sell what, two of them, and that's
Yeah,
like that's double or over double the money, right?
exactly. Yeah, he already made his money back. You know. Yeah.
Okay, well, now that we bashed Angel's character, let's
Of
talk
course.
about let's talk about these very key films in our lineup. It is The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Andrew Garfield films. So what's interesting, Daniel, is when I approached you about this, and when we were figuring out when we were going to do this, you described these films as some of the best and some of the worst of the Spider-Man films. Um, you want to kind of elaborate? We're obviously going to start with the first film and then get to the second film, but
Okay, okay.
what do you mean by that? What are you talking about?
Okay, so you have me on here to like, all right, here, defend yourself.
For something you said in a private meeting
Yeah,
chat.
right, right. Hey, you told me once, like defend your stand. But I'm happy to. I'm definitely happy to defend
Hmm.
uh, the movie. Well, like you said, we'll get to the second one.
Yes, let's talk
Um,
about the first one.
yeah. So the first one is Andrew Garfield's first outing as Spider-Man.
Hmm.
Uh, and Lizard was the villain.
Hmm.
I will say this: we're coming off of Spider-Man 3, which I didn't hate as much as people. Hey, I hated parts of it, but I loved other parts of it. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
and you can see as a movie, like yeah, it's not my favorite; it's on the bottom tier, but you can still see that like Raimi was messed up, by the studio
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah.
that. Anyways, we're coming off of that, right? They're rebooting it with Andrew Garfield, and I you don't want something that's exactly the same because it's not going to be as good as Toby's first and second movie. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just not going to be. So what are you going to do that's different? How are you going to approach this that's different? And I went in kind of not skeptical, like but I didn't go in like yeah Spider-Man, and you know what I mean. I was like let me see it, and then we'll see.
Yeah.
And I was there opening day, and I went to go see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and right off the bat I remember thinking like oh wow, like the intro was quick. I remember thinking the intro was like oh whoa, that's already different, like the
Right.
intro just being like Spider-Man, and then like the web grabs it and that's it, compared to the Raimi where it's this really intricate, like
Hmm.
going in and out of all the words, the lettering and all the webs and stuff like that. That was really amazing.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, just I was like, oh, we're getting into it. Okay, like that's different. And uh by the end of it, I was kind of blown away.
Mm,
Yeah, like I was like, wow, that was really freaking good. I
mhm.
mean, if you think about what you want in a Spider-Man film, it's not exactly that's what we got with Toby, right? Toby gave us exactly Raimi, they gave us exactly what we expected and wanted out of a Spider-Man film. Sure, they made his webbing organic, but that was still that was almost to ground the film for the people that aren't
Yeah,
diehard Spider-Man fans. So it kind of made more sense. You know what I mean? Where
yeah.
was he gonna get all the fluid from? Because in the Andrew Garfield movies, that kind of was weird, right? That he's like buying the fluid from Oscorp.
He's stealing
And
it, I think.
yeah, and no one is noticing. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, there's. I'm not saying it's the perfect movie. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But I was expecting not so good. And when I went to go see the Lizard one, I thought Dr. Connors was a good character. I thought it was great. I thought he was a great villain. The fight scenes, the action with the Lizard was amazing. But that was amazing. I mean, no pun intended. But I
Hmm.
I just feel like that was obviously like good. We saw it. You know what I mean? We saw that it was
Yeah.
good. There's but what I thought was a little bit not deeper, but if you paid a little bit more attention than just the flashes and the bangs, you know, I'm not saying Andrew's my favorite, but if you're talking about acting, Andrew is like he's just levels above. I mean,
He's
Toby,
certainly one of the best actors to have not maybe not while they were playing Spider-Man, but
mm,
when you look at their career in context, like
right,
Andrew
right.
Garfield has been nominated. I think I don't know if he's won Oscars, but he's definitely
I
been
don't think so.
nominated. Him in
Mhm.
The Social Network is a great example of what he could bring as
Right.
the character of Peter Parker. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, correct. And then his range,
Hmm.
Hacksaw Ridge, and then now Tick Tick Boom. I mean, he can act like
Yeah.
crazy. And in with Toby, I'm not bashing Toby, but I
Hmm.
mean with the teardrops and like and it's not Toby's fault. The writing, like that Peter would say Saturday morning cartoon lines. Like you could
Hmm.
tell someone wrote it. You know what I mean? Like no people don't speak like that. But in Andrew's movie, he's mad. Like when he's mad, he's mad. He's like yelling and you
Yeah.
feel like you're talking to a normal person that will get sad by and affected by the things that they say. Not like oh, I'm sad in the scene and then and then like next scene and which is cool. I loved it. Again, my favorite movies are Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2. Let's go,
Right. Yeah. Of course.
So, but I'm just saying this one, I think Andrew just kind of just gets put at the bottom tier under Tom and Toby. Toby being the first, and then Tom being in the MCU.
Right.
I think Andrew kind of doesn't get talked about enough, but his acting I think is levels above Tom's
And Toby's.
and Toby's. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I think those just felt more like real conversations that you would have with a person. Like if
Yeah.
I met someone right now like at the store, who would be the most realistic person, like what would be the most realistic conversation, and it
Hmm.
would be with Andrew, not even Tom, right? Tom still kind of plays like a kid, but it's like I know you're not a kid, but you still kind of talk to me like that, and so it would
Yeah.
kind of be weird if I talked to someone like Toby. I'd be like, dude, are you in a cartoon? And then but Andrew would seem like a normal, like oh, this is a conversation, this is I'm
Yeah.
talking to a human being,
Well,
you know
I,
what?
I I think a lot of that has to do with the take of of the character in this film, at least, because the second film is a whole different conversation. But this is definitely a different take in that it's kind of darker in tone. It's more grounded, quote unquote. I mean, you have a giant lizard running around and all that.
Yeah.
But what part of what makes it so grounded, I think, are the performances from everyone. I think this has some of the most underrated performances in the Spider-Man films. Andrew Garfield being the number one example. I think Sally Field is great as Aunt May in this. Martin Sheen plays Uncle Ben, and I think he's a very underrated Uncle Ben. One who's definitely more inspired by the Ultimate Spider-Man books. Where he's kind of more laid back and everything, but he can get harsh. I think this has some of the best performances. One thing I want to ask you about is this movie is announced, but it's announced after the cancellation of Spider-Man 4. You know, they didn't do Spider-Man 4 to kind of make up for the third film in ways. They were they were getting ready to film that thing. They had scripts written. You know, there's animatics now out there that you can look at of what it would have been like with the vulture and everything.
Mhm.
And this movie is announced. They're going to reboot it so soon after those films have come out. So my question is thoughts on the idea of rebooting so soon after the third film. What were your thoughts of that?
Well, that's part of why I went into the film kind of like, worried,
Hmm.
because of what you just said. Because I remember they were gonna keep going with, and I wanted a four because I wanted Raimi to redeem himself because it was so obvious that it was not his fault that they shoehorned in Venom there,
Hmm.
and you know, uh, and still the action with Venom is not trash. You know what I mean?
No,
In that
no.
film, but the character is right, like it's not developed at all, and it kind of it muddies up the rest of the film, right? Like if we would have stayed with the Sandman character, like those moments were really cool. That's why I'm excited to see Sandman in No Way Home, because that was my favorite part of Spider-Man 3. Is any Sandman moment that was they're just so
Hmm.
dope. So with Spider-Man, I didn't. That's what I'm trying to say is like Spider-Man 3 didn't warrant me shutting down Spider-Man 4. Does that
Right,
make sense?
right. No,
Like,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So that's where I was kind of like, what? Like we're just already gonna pick a new Spider-Man, and like a Spider-Man, not like a character in the franchise. We're gonna change Peter Parker. Like it's gonna be a whole different thing. Why? We were doing so good. We had one bad movie, like one not so good movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not
yeah. A
total trash.
controversial film.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
little, but the first two were amazing. Were
Hmm.
fantastic. They were spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. He's
Um,
looking for it.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was worried, and I think maybe that's why I think it's better. Maybe than people think it is. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. But I went in thinking like, what? So we're not gonna get Spider-Man 4, maybe a Sinister Six or a Craven. I always wanted a Craven or
Yeah, the
Mysterio at the
lizard.
time. At the time I wanted a Mysterio really bad.
Yeah. And
So
also the lizard that they were hyping up big time in those films with uh Dylan Baker's the actor. Yeah.
and he
And
did great. He
yeah, and
did great.
I
Yeah.
wanted to see that.
Yeah, when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, what?" And you see, he doesn't have his arm. He's talking to
Yeah.
Peter. He doesn't have his arm. You're like, "What? Yes, world building. Yes." You know what I
and
mean?
and he already knows Dr. Octavius and
Oh,
everything.
I
Yeah.
know. So cool. It's so cool.
Fantastic.
That was so great. That's why I feel like people have a certain feeling about Andrew
The Amazing
Garfield,
Spider-Man. Right.
the Amazing Spider-Man. But if you kind of drop that's why I kind of went in blank. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go in blank. I'm just gonna see it, and then I'm gonna decide from the runtime, from the play to the credits. What do I think in between this time? Not the other stuff. Oh, they got rid of Spider-Man 4. Oh, no more Toby. No more Raimi. Like, don't put my feelings into it. Just from the press play when I sit down to the end of the credits. How do I feel about this performance in this film? And yes, there are a few things that are weird. I didn't like the whole like they try to make the dad like he was like
Oh my God. We'll get to that.
like
Wait, no, hold on.
okay.
Well, that's a big what the fuck right there. We'll get to that. Uh, nah, man. Let Before we get into anything like that, let's talk about let's talk about the take of the film. Obviously, they
Okay.
got
Okay.
Mark Webb, who's a very different director stylistically than Sam Raimi. Mark Webb, his most famous work at the time was 500 Days of Summer with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Zoe. Okay, I can already tell. Yeah, he's trying to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could already tell.
No, but that points to the leaning into character building, right?
Right? Yeah.
Versus world building. Not to say that there wasn't any world building, but it's a more character led film.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Than a universe led film, like a world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it
Uh,
definitely has that independent flavor to it, you know?
yes, yes.
Like it's wearing it on its sleeve, you know? It plays the indie music at points. It has similar kind of cinematography in that it's kind of grayish a bit until, you know, the action scenes where it's darker. There's a lot of contrast. But when he's at, like, say, the school, you know, it has kind of a grounded look to it. You know, it's very, very desaturated because it's the bland moments of his life until he
Right.
meets someone like Gwen, you know? So, I actually appreciate that interpretation. You know, I appreciate that approach when it comes to Spider-Man during his high school years.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that it's first of all it's contemporary.
Hmm.
It's crazy that the movie's almost 10 years old. That is insane to me.
That
Um,
is really crazy, and it still holds up. I mean,
yeah, I think it could easily come out today. Honestly,
mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so what did you think about this style of it being kind of teen drama-ish in a way that's different from the other films?
Okay, so when I saw the trailer, again, like I said, I was still worried until I sat down in my seat. You know what I mean? Because of that, because of the choice of the director, those type of films aren't my favorite. They're not bad, you know, and
Hmm.
I'll watch them. I like them, but they're not my favorite, right? And so I thought, well, how are they going to do that to Spider-Man? Not knowing that that's really what I wanted. I didn't want another Saturday morning cartoon Spider-Man that I loved. I'm not talking trash about it. I loved that Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, yeah. But you had three of them, you
Yes,
know? Yeah,
exactly. But I
yeah.
had three of them. And so this was really a refreshing take. So if you're asking me how I felt, it felt like a breath of fresh air. That's what it felt like. It felt like, oh man, they took a chance and they executed fairly well. I thought they when we talk about character, not that Toby didn't do this. Toby did this too, where he goes out and he tries his powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes.
Um, but again, I felt like you could see that in an animated Saturday morning cartoon in 30 minutes, and that's going to be one of the sequences, right? And it
Hmm.
was very similar to that. But with Andrew, when he did it, I don't know, it felt like that's what I would do. I would go to like experience it that way, and I'd find a little space that's kind of hidden, and then see what I can do first, and then mess around or whatever. I don't know. I thought
Use the
that was
skateboards.
yeah, the skateboards and stuff like that. I don't know. I thought it was a refreshing take. You know,
Yes.
even the suit was cool. I thought I really liked the suit. Um,
Another grounded element of it where they're, you know, they're mixing spandex, they have sunglasses for the lenses. It
right.
kind of looks like something like an ice bobber would wear, you know, like or like a competitive skier or
Bobsled.
something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bobsledder,
yeah,
what did I
yeah.
say? Ice bobber.
They're gonna be in the comments. Bobsled, you jerk.
And we've never gotten our proper respect. Yeah.
Well, Cool Runnings gave him some.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, cool. Now on Disney Plus. Um, but yeah, that's another element of it that's grounded. They're trying to. It kind of looks like basketball material. The the
Mhm,
the
mhm.
suit. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. It does. His head did look like basketball. But the one part of that take, I guess we're not getting there yet, but part of that
Hmm.
that's the direction, with the parents and stuff like that. I That's one thing where I appreciated it because it was bold, but and it was different, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it. That was one aspect I did not like about the movie. I was like, man, I could have done without that. I'm glad they didn't lean into it more than they could have. I saw some deleted scenes where they really make it seem like it's on purpose and everything is planned. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and especially
So
the second movie.
oh yeah, yeah, exactly. No, that
Yeah,
it's even worse. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
so
But we'll talk a little bit about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, one thing I want to discuss that I think is very interesting is the way that they're approaching the romance in this. They don't use the conventional Mary Jane Watson, who's the most famous Spider-Man love interest. They use Gwen Stacy, who I don't think she was the first, but she was the first love of his life.
Right.
And when you include Gwen Stacy in anything, that in of itself is kind of a signal of what is to come in terms of the lore. If you're familiar with Spider-Man lore on any level, you'll know about the death of Gwen Stacy. So what did you think about this approach? What they got Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. They have remarkable chemistry, both of them. So what do you think about that?
So I thought, again, the realism, that's how people that like each other speak. But obviously, I think it's because not just um, Andrew Garfield, uh, his level of acting compared to Toby's, but also Emma Watson's compared
Emma Stone,
to Dunst. You know what I mean? I thought Emma Stone, Emma
right?
Watson, Emma Stone. She was great. She killed it. She
Hmm.
killed it. I thought she was fantastic and was at the level. It kind of elevated the entire film, yeah, their chemistry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really like that. And we're not talking about the second film yet. Um, uh, but that's one thing that I loved about the second film is their
Hmm.
chemistry. I didn't like certain aspects of it, and we'll get to it, like the relationship stuff. I was like, whatever. But when they would speak, like their chemistry, when they would speak to each other, it just felt really real. You know what I mean? And that's throughout in the first one and the second one. You know what
Well,
I mean? It
yeah.
just
Well, I
felt
think it's
really real.
because it was in part real because I think at one point they were together because of
Ah,
those films. So
ah,
that helps. You know,
It
that just
does, yeah. I mean, it showed. It showed because even
yeah.
in a bad film, the best moments were when they spoke to each other. You know what
Right.
I mean? So, and even the parts of the relationship that I didn't like in the second film is when they didn't speak to each other. That's what I
Right.
didn't like about it. It's like, dude, get back to talking. Why are they not talking for like 30 minutes of the movie? You know what I mean? Like, get
Hmm.
back to talking because those are the best moments, you know? So
Yeah.
their chemistry with I liked from when she shows up to till the death, you know? Uh,
You know, it's funny because it reminds me quite a bit of, like I said, the indie feel to it. But it reminds me a lot of Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zoe Deschanel getting together in 500 Days of Summer. It reminds me
right,
of
right.
Logan Lerman and Emma Watson in Perks of Being a Wallflower, and it's a strong approach. Just a strong and it mimic. One thing I don't think these movies, well, let's talk more about the first movie, get enough credit for is how I think faithful they could be to the Ditko stuff. You know,
Mhm.
early on with Spider-Man's
Yeah, yeah,
comics. You know,
yeah.
like he's talking to all sorts of girls. He gets angry.
Mhm.
He's irresponsible at first. You know what I mean?
He's emotional.
He's emotional. He's a hormonal
Yes, he's
teenager.
emotional. He's emotional. He's yelling at Ben in the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, not that Toby doesn't, but
Right. Right.
it's, there's like a different level of like the intensity when Andrew's like talking to him and tearing up. Like you really feel that moment, versus like when Toby's saying, you're like you feel it because you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
he's
Well,
mad.
I feel it
It's just
completely.
a different
Well,
level of production. Look, a different look,
Well,
exactly.
a different approach for sure. You
Right,
know,
right,
yeah,
right,
one is
right.
definitely more comic booky. This one, which I actually respect about this film
Mhm.
specifically, is how it's more real in terms of
Yeah,
those moments. You know, it's approached like I could put myself for sure in that scene when he is told about responsibility in this
yeah,
film. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
like absolutely. One thing I want to talk about is Uncle Ben, who is obviously the most important figure in
Mhm.
Spider-Man's life.
Yeah.
Here he's played by Martin Sheen.
Mhm.
He's a very different version than the Cliff Robertson one, who's kind of more grandpa-ish.
Mhm.
Whereas
Mhm.
here he feels like he could even be his dad. You know,
Right.
what did you think about the utilization of Uncle Ben? Did it feel repetitive to you in compared to the first film? What about it did you like or didn't?
Well, again, the level of actor. I think everybody's performance in this Amazing Spider-Man is just better than all the Spider-Man movies.
Mm.
Like I mean,
Before and after?
before and after. I
Hmm.
think the acting in it is just it's like a play. Like you know what I mean? Like it's just very real. Like it's again, like it's about the characters.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about how in the second film how that didn't work.
Yeah,
Like
how it deflates.
it deflates it. Yeah, they still are all about the characters, but it didn't work there, and for other reasons. But what I'm trying to say is just because they really leaned on the characters, it could go good like it did in the first movie, but it can also go bad like it did it can be utilized well, and they can really misfire also.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it as a good or bad thing. It's just a fact. I just feel like that it's just a fact. Like their acting is just all around elevated in these two Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I think it's noticeable. I think that you know what I mean. I
Yeah,
think
no, it is
it's fairly
noticeable.
clear.
It is. Yeah.
Uh, Tom is great. Robert Downey Jr. amazing. Tomei is amazing, and Ned's great. But I these moments, like I said, like I can put myself in it more, like in a
Yeah.
real moment. Like it just feels more like that's an actual legit family moment that's happening.
Yeah, well,
Him,
here's a question. Do you think that the other actors in the Spider-Man history of film, do you think if they were put in those roles, like say Toby was put in Andrew's role, right? He was given the same material.
yeah,
Do you think he would have been as good?
I think he would have been close.
Mm,
Because Toby can act too.
yeah.
Toby, him as an actor, I think,
Brothers, I mean, my
yeah,
God.
yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
I was gonna say. I think he could. I think he could. That it's just the writing. I mean, look at some of the lines that Toby has to say and deliver. Like, how did he not laugh delivering some of those lines? Like,
I think he
oh boy.
did.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like weird lines where it just doesn't make sense in the context of the conversation when he's talking to Mary Jane or other people. It just doesn't make sense. So
Punch me, I bleed, Daniel.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Punch me, I bleed. Yeah, right. I forgot about that one. You know?
It
So
rides up the crotch.
but that's what I'm saying, right? Like that's weird for anyone to deliver. Like I don't know. That's why I don't really blame Toby in general. I
I
think
wish Angel were here because this would be the best fight I've ever seen in my life.
yeah, no, I think Toby could do it. I think Toby put in the Amazing Spider-Man. I think he could do it. I don't know about as good. That's really tough. Like you said, Brothers is a really good example of Toby really bringing some fire, right? Like,
How
geez,
about Tom? How about Tom Holland? If he was given that material,
uh, n- oof.
it's tough, isn't it? Because I think they're all great actors.
They're so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all great. And you know what's so funny is that I think okay, so stay with me here.
Oh
Stay with me.
shit.
I think Tom's Spider-Man acting is better than Toby's, right? Like
As Spider-Man.
as Spider-Man, yeah,
Okay.
as
Okay.
Spider-Man, exactly, as Spider-Man. But I think as level of actors, I think Toby can kind of bring it more than Tom. You know?
As Peter or as Spider-Man?
It just as an actor, I
I
think
see.
Toby is the better actor than Tom Holland. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right.
But I don't know. I don't know. I think I like Tom Holland. I like him as a person, like in interviews
Mm-hmm.
and in the movies that he's in. I like him more. But if I'm gonna like Prisoners, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen Tom Holland do something like that. I have not seen him act like that. It,
Prisoners.
yeah, didn't
Are you
he?
talking
Or
about
brothers, brothers. Sorry, brothers.
Brothers? Yeah,
Brothers.
Jake
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gyllenhaal's in
Yeah,
Prisoners.
that's right, that's right. But yeah, yeah. But even Jake Gyllenhaal, right? Great as Mysterio, but that wasn't his best outing as an actor too. You know what I mean? I don't.
You know, I want to argue, but this is not the Far From Home
Right,
podcast.
right, right,
So
right. Yeah, 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 right.
so let's just put a pin in that one for now.
Yeah, right, right. But the point is that I think. Oh man, I don't know. Like you said, they're all good actors. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? It didn't happen that way, so it's
Right.
really hard. I don't know. I
The
don't know.
Andrew's the one that really really
Got it.
spoke to you. And
Yes.
well, then we good then. You're
Yeah,
excited
yeah.
to see him in the new film then.
Yeah, they're all gonna get their chance at
Right.
it like at the same time. We're all gonna see it. That's why we're so excited because we know
Exactly.
we
What
know.
let's
Oh,
finally talk about the big mystery of the film, the untold truth as was advertised when the film was coming out, which had to do with the parents of Peter Parker. Um so in the comics it's revealed that the parents are shield agents.
right.
I don't remember the extent of, like, they did some James Bond stuff together, and yeah, that happened. So they try to adapt that type of story here. They tease it heavily. They never really get into it in the first film. They get heavily into it in the second film. But it's clear that the disappearance of Peter's parents had a great effect on him. So what did you think about this as a storytelling method for Peter?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think it really did anything for it.
Hmm.
I mean, it did something for the character, right? To be driven in certain scenes, right?
Yeah,
Like
he's clearly traumatized and
right,
haunted
right.
by the truth.
Exactly. So so not that it did nothing for the character. That's silly. It definitely drove the character, um, but it did nothing for the overall like for my overall entertainment.
Hmm.
Like I didn't I didn't really. I didn't like it. I didn't find it interesting. You know, every time that would come up, I wanted it to go away. Like just
Yeah.
go to the next scene. I started looking at my time. You know, like oh god, dude, get out of here. Don't do this.
Get
Don't do
out of here.
because even in the comics I wasn't a fan of that when that's revealed. I wasn't even a fan of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not to say I mean sometimes they can take stuff from comics and make it improve it in the
Sure.
movie, you
Yeah.
know. Civil War is a good example, Guardians of the Galaxy another example. um uh Howard the Duck, no, I'm just kidding. but but yeah, here it's something I didn't like, and then it's something I didn't like. You know what I mean? Like they didn't
Yeah.
really improve it. It's the same. It's similar, like you said. It's not the same thing, but it's similar. And
Hmm.
I was just like, no, no, no. I liked when I didn't know. I liked when I like
Right.
not knowing, and it's about Uncle Ben's death. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's what it's about. And that's all. I mean, I get it. You have to introduce different things. I mean, there's decades and decades of takes on this character. So
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it, but to different takes. I'm glad we got a different look at it, you know. But I didn't really like it compared to the original or the other films like Tom's or Toby's, where they
Yeah.
either just ignore it or Uncle Ben is the business. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it actually gets in the way of what is the most important aspect of the film, which
Yeah.
is him becoming Spider-Man. Because and the reason I think this is because when we look at the Uncle Ben death, right? Um, it's not resolved, which is he doesn't find the guy who killed Uncle Ben in the film, you know, and he doesn't have that moment that is required for him to become Spider-Man. Like
Right.
it's the moment of realization. I'm Spider-Man because I let the guy who ends up killing my uncle go,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
that, as far as I remember, that doesn't happen in the film. You know, he's
No,
looking for the guy, but there comes a point where like, it's part of this montage where
yeah.
he's also creating the suit. So,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
so
Mhm.
you're at that point you're led to believe, well, is the big bad villain going to be the guy he's going after, or is he just gonna let him slide because Lizard's in town? You know what I mean? Like you would have that edited sequence, that montage in there where it's juxtaposed with him making the suit, right, as him building to the point where he can find the guy and face him. But that doesn't happen.
No, and how does he? I forgot. Right? He doesn't he tell Gwen like it is my responsibility, or that's the moment. Like it's like a conversation with Gwen, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's where she finds out for sure. I
That's
mean,
right. That's
but
right. Yeah. Yeah.
but that's not. I think that's part of what makes people less enthusiastic about Andrew as Spider-Man, because he doesn't have that moment. And although the original film is very campy in many ways, and but it has that moment, you know, and it takes it very seriously. It's not played for laughs at all. It's not comic booky. It's a very dark sequence where he finds the guy, he beats him up, you know, breaks his arm, and then, you know, the guy trips over his own foot, and he goes and he dies, you know.
Hmm.
So that's what I think is missing, and I think the dad plot of where's my dad, where's my mom, and that not even being resolved is what gets in the way of us having those moments that are required for Spider-Man.
I agree. I it
Yeah.
gets in the way is the best way to explain it. Like I couldn't get my like the wording on I couldn't articulate it. But right when you said that, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. That's how I felt. Every time I was like, dude, this is in the way. This why
Hmm.
does this even have to be? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah, in the way is the best way to describe how I felt about the whole parent thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
didn't like
boy,
it.
howdy the second film.
Yeah, and Tom's didn't have that moment either, but I felt like
It's
that was
alluded to.
it's
It's
alluded to
yeah.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. It's still an important thing that's mentioned. We know it as fans. We don't have to rehash. Even as non-fans, everyone knows it. So like, let's not waste time and let's get into it. You know, that's different. Here they tried to approach it, but this is how they approached it, and it just
Yeah.
didn't work for me. You know what I mean?
It's so unapproached that what they did they tried resolving it in
Mhm.
the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game. Not the movie, the game is
Right.
about him finding And when I say the game, I mean the game based on the movie. It's about him finding the killer, and then Carnage is somehow brought into that game. Like, what are you doing? Why is this not in your movie?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like they couldn't decide, right? They
Yeah.
couldn't decide if they wanted to really make it about that or not, and so they kind of did both the Ben and this thing, and they kind of, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seemed indecisive, like a waste of time. I didn't. They could have used that for other moments, at
It's
least.
probably because of the pressure of like people are already familiar with this because of the movies that we are rebooting. You know what I
Right.
mean? The previous movies already covered all this, but we have to do the origin again because and I think that The Amazing Spider-Man is actually what prompted Marvel not to do the origin again, because look what happens,
I
everyone
agree.
compares it,
I agree. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah, I
unfortunate.
agree. And that's why I'm glad they didn't with Tom's,
Hmm.
but yeah, no,
A
misfire.
little bit,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so
Let let
more.
Yeah, let's talk about the villain, which is the lizard played by Reese Ifans. This it's funny because the Sam Raimi films were heavily teasing, oh, he's coming, the lizard's coming, man, and Spider-Man 4 doesn't happen. It wouldn't have been Lizard anyways, but here we are with Amazing Spider-Man,
Right.
seeing the lizard finally. What did you think of this interpretation of the character? It's a very classic story from the comics. What do you think about it?
I loved it.
Mhm.
I thought it was amazing. I I wish he would have had his lab coat. That would have
Yeah,
been
the
cool.
snout.
Yeah, the snout. I
Mhm.
didn't really like how he looked like a Koopa Troopa from the Mario movies. If anybody remembers those, but
Monkey.
yeah, that was one of my favorite worst movies of all time. But
You look like Luigi, bro.
no, but yeah, just cast me in the reboot.
Yeah, right.
Like Chris Pratt, right?
Yeah, but well, Charlie Day is playing Luigi in this.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
It's
Um,
ridiculous. Oh my
yeah.
god, it's Luigi, guys! Oh.
Yeah, I wonder how the voice is gonna be, but we'll
We'll
see.
see. We'll
That,
see. We'll see.
yeah, but yeah, I didn't. I really wanted the snout. I wanted, the whole thing. But I thought the character was well developed.
Hmm.
You feel the intensity of it. There is if you look at it, there's still that double life from the lizard. It's kind of like mirroring what the Green Goblin was doing, where he's
Hmm.
like trying to live this double life. He's the Green Goblin, and he's like trying to be a businessman dad.
Yeah.
And then here's Connors. He's this scientist. He's also a dad, right? And then he's this villain. He's like, he has these things that he thinks he has to do. So I don't know. I liked it. I
Right.
really liked that. So I like the it mirrors Peter Parker, right? Like
He's
yeah,
missing. They're both missing something.
exactly. They're
He's
both
missing his arm. Peter's missing the truth about his family.
right, right.
Everything is kept from them, and they're unwilling. You know,
Mhm.
they're unwilling participants in that.
I think it's a great parallel to have.
Hmm.
Like within the movie, within the villain and the hero, I think that's a good parallel to have.
Yeah.
But not only that, I thought when I was watching it, I was like, I think not homage, it's not homage, but I think they're trying to be like, hey, like the goblin worked because of this,
The
like
personal
the
aspect of it.
personal
Right.
aspect.
Yeah.
So like let's try and add that to the lizard and see how we can kind of adapt it to this take, right? But still kind of
Yeah.
have a double life type of villain where he's a villain, but there's still something that the viewer can relate to, right? In
Yeah.
something. He's not like a total monster that you see him all the time. There's still some aspect of humanity within him. I mean, even in Green Goblin, right until the moment where he dies, he tells him, "Don't tell Harry," right? You
Right.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's that little ounce like of humanity still, like a
Yeah.
little bit,
And I
and
love Peter. He doesn't tell him
doesn't,
until
yeah,
he
doesn't
doesn't.
know at
Yeah.
the at knowing it would make him hate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He like still doesn't tell him because he was asked. Like he still holds his loyalty to the villain. To the villain, he holds no loyalty. The dude's a villain. You know what I mean? Like who cares? Like
Yeah.
what the heck? but for because of his request, he's still honorable enough, and he doesn't, you know. And so I don't know, but here the aspect of the double life mirroring Andrew's double life, you know, Peter
Yes.
Parker's double life. I thought that was a good parallel to have between the good and bad. That
Yeah.
kind of grays everything, you know what
And
I mean?
and they also get along fairly well. You know, his
Right,
dad knew, or his dad knew Dr. Connors, so
right,
there's
right,
there's
right.
kind of a protective quality that
Exactly.
Lizard has for Peter, even though he's trying to turn everyone else into lizards. I think the best comparison is that in terms of approach, it feels like they were trying to do a mix of kind of Doc Ock and Sandman in the with this
Oh,
character. You know what
oh,
I
that,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that makes total sense.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Because like yeah,
Yes,
no, because
playtime.
exactly. No, because that's how it was. It was like you get this where with Octavius, yes, there was this humanity and but this villainy, but the villainy could be attributed to the chip. Remember, like the chip kind of corrupts
Yes.
his way of thinking. So is it really even him?
Hmm.
Like so you really feel for the character, even though you're like, oh well, stop killing, like stop trying to kill all these people you murder. But like you're like, man, that's a dude that can't. He's like not under his own control.
Yeah, he's a
And
victim.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
here we kind of feel that too. Like he's trying to get back his arm. I don't know about turning the whole city into lizards, like you weirdo, but that's the villainy part, right? That's the whole like you're a monster.
That's the comic book,
The comic book
element.
part, yeah, exactly. The like you have to have that a little bit.
Isn't this great?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that's I
Yeah.
like in the action scenes. The
Hmm.
action scenes, I was blown. I thought were, I mean, I thought they were incredible. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And obviously, you know, it, uh, uh, I put the lizard and the Spider-Man fights up there with Octavius and
Mm.
and
And
Toby
Spider-Man. Yeah,
in
yeah.
Spider-Man 2. Like I put that up there. Like in terms of fights. Same with Mysterio.
Mysterio. Hmm.
Yeah, those three fights: Lizard and Andrew, Mysterio and Tom, and Octavius and
Doc Ock.
Doc Ock.
Or
Yeah.
Doc Ock and Spider-Man. Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
those three are like my favorite. And not talking about like Spider Verse. They have
Well, yeah.
that
That
whole
that's
movie.
a whole other
That's the
discussion.
whole movie. But yeah, these fight scenes in terms of the live action, I put the lizard fight up there. I really do
Hmm.
really like it. So you know,
Well, before we talk about the second film,
uh-huh.
I want to know something very quickly about your thoughts on this because you've stated in the past it's one of your personal favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you think it's so? I mean, we've been talking about this, but is there anything specific about the character, the representation, maybe the repetitive quality that you think makes it underrated? People don't they look over this one.
Mm. Yes. And it's it's like being the middle child, right?
Mm,
And I think that's what's happening here, and like that's why I try to like take that out. Like Tom, he belongs to the MCU. So
right.
his movies are just of a caliber, like they are of a caliber where the people are already connecting it to Avengers. So it's almost like I didn't really like not, I liked Homecoming. I just
Hmm.
didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. I
Mm,
liked the Vulture. Like some of those moments with the Vulture are just whoa, like whoa,
yeah.
kind of moments. But as a movie as a whole, I liked Far From Home better. I was more entertained with Far From Home. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I think these ones get overlooked because these belong in the MCU, so they get connected to Infinity War and all this, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, like how can we not say these are the best?
Yeah.
And then how can we not say Toby, who is the first?
Right.
And obviously I'm not saying it's bad, but Spider-Man 2, one of the best comic book movies of all time. So how can we not say that's not the best? And I say probably Toby's the best. I mean, the Spider-Man 2 is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie. So I'm not arguing there. I'm just saying because this one's stuck in the middle that it gets overlooked Totally. No matter how good Amazing Spider-Man was gonna be and how fun, people are gonna be like, well, it's not in the MCU. Oh,
Hmm.
and it's not Toby and Raimi, so like it's
Yeah.
okay, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, if you take all that out from the runtime, from play to credits, Amazing Spider-Man is an entertaining movie, really entertaining. I think it's one of my favorites, like I said. So
Okay, well
really do.
that's fair enough. And
Yeah.
before we finish up this part of the discussion, I'm
Mm.
going to edit a segment of our interview with Gavin J. Knott, who is the director of the fan film Spider-Man Lotus. I asked him some questions about this film, so there you go. Yes, sir. Andrew Garfield once again. If you could get to that picture again, Angel, because that is an iconic photo.
Yeah.
This will be in the behind the scenes documentary of the film, obviously. Right here. This is fantastic. As many people know, we are going to be starting a series within the days of No Way Home's release, the journey home, as it were. And we're going to be talking about each film. And I just want to get your opinions real quick about the Amazing Spider Man from
Mm.
2012, the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider Man. And Lotus felt like the best of Mark Webb's portfolio, which was is it 50 Days of Summer or 500 Days of
500.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to add 450 to that shit. 500 Days of Summer. It felt a lot like that in terms of tone and emotion. And
Right.
I'm very excited about the wit, because Spider-Man is a very fun character as well. Um, what were your thoughts? Because you said you based a lot of your persona back in the day on Andrew Garfield. What were your thoughts on the idea of Spider-Man being rebooted from Maguire to Garfield?
I think I think that the Amazing Spider-Man has a lot of merit to it. They take a lot from the comics in the right way, and
Mhm.
I think it's okay to make Spider-Man this kind of this modern skater type dude. Like I'm okay with that. I think that's a change that works. A lot of people disagreed, but I think making him this kind of outcast skater. In the Ditko days, he didn't have many friends at all. He was very much a loner. He was very much alone all the time. I think Tasm does such a great job making Peter Parker feel like such an alone character, and he's so isolated from everybody else. And you can see that with the kind of mundane high school life that he's in. He doesn't really fit in anywhere. He doesn't have many friends, and he's kind of socially awkward. He's got these kind of weird tics. He stutters a lot. He skates just to escape kind of his problems and everything. I think those were great changes. I think they really work for the character. Literally, my biggest problems just stem from the whole parents plot. But I've never been a fan of the parents plot in the comics in general. Even Stan Lee said that he kind of regrets that decision to make them very important people. And I know that J.M. DeMatteis, my favorite Spider-Man writer, talked about how it would have been better if his parents were just working class people who
Mhm.
weren't these important super spies or these important scientists.
Shield agents.
Yeah. Because with Spider-Man, you've got Uncle Ben and Aunt May, these completely normal people, and Peter Parker takes these values from them and instills them in this grand life. So I think it would be a very interesting story arc for Peter Parker to think his parents are so mysterious and they're so full of secrets, and for him to finally discover what the secret is, the fact that they're normal. They didn't have anything special or important about them. They're just normal people who ended up suffering a tragedy and died. I think I'd prefer that approach to the character of Spider-Man. I think it fits in line with him to find out, wow, my parents were nothing special at all. They were just people who loved me and they died in an accident. I think that's how the canon for my Spider-Man would be, is that his parents aren't these huge people. They're just, like I said, they're normal. So I think that's my biggest problem, along with I think Lizard could have used more depth. But I thought that the interpretation of Spider-Man, the character himself, was done well. I think the changes were respectful. The other thing I didn't really like was Captain Stacy. I think it's okay.
Dennis Leary.
Yeah, I mean the casting's fine, but the writing, I like it better when Captain Stacy's like the only police captain in the entire city who believes in Spider-Man. The entire police force is after him, and Captain Stacy is one of the only people who believes in him. I prefer that approach. I'm okay with him like initially being against Spider-Man, and I thought they did a pretty good. I'm okay with the arc they did, but his final line, "Leave Gwen out of your life," kind of it's less engaging to me than the comic books, because in the comics, it's very heartbreaking because he tells him keep Gwen safe, and Peter does everything he can to uphold that promise, and in the movie, it's more like he goes against his promise. He kind of goes, disobeys what he swore to a dying man, and she ends up dying for it. I feel like that wasn't really ideal for me. And, I still love the tragic ending of him having to push away Gwen in the rain. He's like, I can't see you anymore. That's very well done. I thought it was perfect. Like that ending with Uncle Ben's speech, perfect freaking Spider-Man. That's top tier. But that last line, those are the best kind. I don't know. I wasn't on board with that. I wish it was done differently and approached differently. But for the most part, I enjoy, I think Tasm is a good interpretation of Spider-Man. I wish there were some big changes in certain areas of the movie, but generally, I don't think it goes too far off from what the character should be.
Right. Well, I can hear myself. It depicts the character in a darker light. As a fan, did you think this was appropriate or not?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the tone was pretty perfect for Spider-Man at the time. I love, the score by James Horner, the perfect Spider-Man score. It sounds so, not majestic, but very, just isolating and lonesome, the score. And it feels very, I can't find my words right now, but you get what I'm trying to say. He feels like he's in the box, and he's not open to the outside world. He's very peculiar. Peculiar was the word I was looking for. But I thought the tone was very perfect. I love how Mark Webb decided to approach the movie, and I think that tone is near perfect for Spider-Man, along with Spider-Man 2. They're very different, but they both work very well. And I think with Lotus, we did what we could to kind of merge those two tones and see what worked and what didn't work. And I'm really satisfied with how it came out.
Well, with Andrew Garfield specifically as Peter Parker, you brought up that you like the contemporary take on Peter being kind of like an isolated skateboarder. What about that spoke to you specifically? Was it the fact that it was contemporary?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I appreciate about it is that they took the original comics. They thought, okay, this character, Peter Parker, is a lonesome kid who doesn't have any friends. He's not connected with the outside world. And at the time in the 60s, a loser was known as like a bookworm. He read books and was interested in school. And that's what a loser was back then. You take it in the modern day, what would a loser be in 2012, or a quote unquote loser? I don't like calling people losers, but the general interpretation, right. What would that be? What does that look like? So you think of back in 2012, at least, a lot of the skater people or the people who were skating and stuff like that, how they generally were kind of pushed out of social circles, or they weren't included in social events. And that's changed over the years. I've seen that skaters now are more accepted, but back in 2012, of course, it's very, very different. And people, Peter Parker's listening to like Coldplay and stuff like that. He's like a very hipster guy, and a lot of people are, generally at a high school, it's very realistic. Generally at a high school, people would be pushing him outside their social circles, and people say he's too good looking for Peter Parker. I don't think that really matters. It's the fact that he's socially awkward and he struggles talking to people. That alone would insinuate he can't get a girlfriend, he can't get a date, anything like that. That works for me. It's completely cool. So I think Andrew is the perfect casting for modern Spider-Man. I don't think you can get much better. I love John Bubniak. I think he's also a perfect Spider-Man casting. But man, I love that kind of modern skater approach to the character. I think it works really well.
And maybe the biggest difference between The Amazing Spider-Man and its predecessors with the Raimi films is the love interest of Gwen Stacy. So what did you think of Emma Stone's interpretation of that character? I think
Gwen was done, pretty well, and I like the idea that they wanted to approach these movies like a tragedy. Gwen was going to die no matter what. Her death was inevitable. So I think Mark Webb's original approach was to build up to that. He wanted to kill off Captain Stacy, and then he wanted to kill off Gwen. But I think the studio interference got lost in there, and unfortunately, that original pitch, that original vision of this tragedy of Gwen Stacy, it got lost, in them trying to keep up with the MCU. And it's not even Mark Webb's fault. It's not the writer's fault. It's nobody's fault except the studio executives trying their best to live up to the MCU and try to keep up with them. And it's very tragic and disappointing to see where it went, and them trying to build a Sinister Six universe before it could have been before they had found their footing even. So I don't know. It's very tragic to see where those movies went and what they could have been. But yeah, I mean, I love the approach and the original pitch that they had.
Yeah, there's definitely potential in that first film, you know, for a large franchise.
Oh yeah.
And this is going to be the last question, because I could talk to you all day. You could talk to us all day about Spider-Man, of course.
Yeah.
But do you think specifically Garfield's Spider-Man will be redeemed in Spider-Man No Way Home?
I don't know if there will be enough screen time to change his character. But I think in the public eye, I think people will turn around on Andrew Spider-Man. I think in many ways, this movie, if it's done right, could unite Spider-Man fans together in a lot of ways. But it has to be done right. If they make some sort of change to Tobey that people disagree with, expect nonstop war for the rest of Spider-Man's existence. So I'm sure they were very careful with it. I'm sure that they made sure that they were paying justice and respect to these characters. So I think as long as they keep the characters how they were and how people remember them, this movie could do a lot for the public's interpretation of Spider-Man. It could do a lot for the community as a whole. So I'm cautiously very excited for it.
Well, you just brought up Tobey, and real quick, do you want to see Tobey be a variant for Uncle Ben? Tom's Uncle Ben?
I think it's harmless. You know, I don't like, a lot of people have gotten angry about it, but I mean, I think it's no big deal. You know, if they do it, they do it. It doesn't harm the Tobey interpretation of the character in any way. So I think, you know, if they do it, cool. If they don't do it, then cool. You know, it can go either way.
I personally want to see it.
Organic or mechanical web shooters?
Mechanical, all the way.
Yeah!